We have all stood in an endless corridor exactly like this one, perfectly climate-controlled, perfectly symmetrical, and deeply alienating. Our civilization has mastered the capacity to engineer every cubic millimeter of a skyscraper or stadium. Yet, despite this structural precision, how we map reality, it treats architecture as an empty mathematical volume, waiting to be filled. But human beings do not live in coordinates. We live in textured, atmospheric environments. This image of the therm vals shows how light interacts with rough stone to create lived space, an environment anchored in human perception. When modern architecture fails, it is because it confuses geometric space with lived space. It engineers the physical container, but ignores the psychological reality of the inhabitant inside it. To fix this, we have to look past structural engineering and turn to phenomenology. This philosophical framework allows us to deconstruct how humans actually perceive and inhabit the world, starting from the ground up. Understanding the mechanics of dwelling is the only way to transform a sterile physical volume into a genuine place, a structure that sustains human existence. To build this phenomenological framework, we start with the philosopher Martin Heidegger. In his 1951 essay, Building, Dwelling, Thinking, he laid the groundwork for how we define space. He pointed to the etymological root of architecture itself. The Old High German word for building, Bauen, originally meant to cherish, protect, and cultivate. It was intrinsically tied to Wohnen, which means to remain in peace. Heidegger derived a strict ontological rule from this translation. Dwelling is not a functional byproduct of architecture. The capacity to dwell is the prerequisite condition of being human. We must know how to dwell before we can truly build. An authentic structure must gather 4 distinct dimensions, a concept he called the Fourfold. It must anchor to the earth, open to the sky, adapt to the finite scale of mortals, and respect the sacred thresholds of the divinities. A modern highway overpass fails this test. It is purely technical infrastructure. It abolishes distance to move vehicles efficiently, but it creates no place. A traditional stone bridge functions differently. It physically anchors into the banks, working with the gravity and materials of the local environment. By framing the river below and the sky above, it organizes the landscape. It gathers the fourfold into a single point, causing a distinct location to come into existence, where before there was only empty space. Authentic architecture acts as a gathering point for these existential dimensions. Throwing quantitative housing metrics at a shortage of shelter will never solve a qualitative crisis of dwelling. Once a place is established, we can examine how the mind operates inside it. In his book, The Poetics of Space, Gaston Bachelard shifts our focus from the external world to the psychological interior. He introduces the concept of topophilia, the love of place. Domestic space is never a neutral container. It absorbs human affects, forming a physical repository for our memories. Bachelard argued the traditional vertical house directly mirrors the human psyche. The cellar represents the deep roots of the unconscious, a space of shadows and primal fears. In contrast, the attic is the realm of light and intellectual clarity, fostering ascensional reverie. For Bachelard, these vertical poles are necessary spatial metaphors that anchor our mental stability. Modern single-story apartments collapse this polarity into a single horizontal plane. Without the depth of a cellar or the height of an attic, the psyche lacks its traditional landmarks, effectively amputating the architectural imagination. This psychological mapping extends to the smallest details. Take a simple corner, a desk drawer, or closed cabinets. They provide the necessary spatial compressions to protect intimacy and store our secrets. Architecture functions as a protective mold that allows the unconscious mind to stabilize and dream. But a mind cannot dwell without a physical body. Philosopher Maurice Merleau-Ponty rejected the idea of objective external space, arguing that we understand dimensions through our flesh. When you live in an apartment for years, you stop looking at its walls. Through a process of incorporation, the physical rooms become an unconscious extension of your own bodily schema. You navigate by muscle memory, not by sight. Yet modern design frequently ignores the physical body. Architect Juhani Pallasmaa criticized what he calls oculocentrism, the profession's obsession with the visual image over all other senses. Algorithmic designs generate monumental, sweeping shapes that look stunning on screens. But these complex geometries alienate the human scale, prioritizing visual spectacle over physical interaction. Pelasma advocates for a haptic architecture, design that demands physical contact. This starts with the tactile weight and texture of raw materials against the skin. Space is shaped by non-visual elements. The hard echoes of an open-plan office or the deadened silence of a library dictate their intimacy. And shadow, often banished by harsh modern lighting, provides depth and psychological mystery. Authentic architecture must finally dethrone the eye. If a building cannot be read by the touch, the hearing, and the weight of the human body, it fails as a habitat. Zooming out from the individual body to the scale of the city, we have to consider where a building sits. Architect Christian Norberg-Schulz defined this relationship through the concept of the genius loci. This is not mysticism. The genius loci, or spirit of place, is the pre-existing material and spatial character of a geographical site. An architect's job is to reveal this local character, rather than overwrite it. Human settlement requires 3 specific spatial archetypes to interact with a site: a focal point of gathering, the center, an axis of movement, the path, and a bounded perimeter, the domain. These archetypes serve a primary existential function: orientation. We have a hardwired psychological need to understand spatial structure in order to navigate reality. Their second critical function is local identification. When a domain reflects the specific materials and climate of its region, we recognize its distinct character, allowing us to feel a sense of belonging. Without the genius loci providing both orientation and identification, humans are left geographically adrift and existentially homeless. We can apply this phenomenological model to the environments of supermodernity. Anthropologist Marc Augé diagnosed these spaces as non-places. Think of airport terminals, generic hotel lobbies, and chain supermarkets. These standardized spaces of pure transit lack identity, relation, and history. They are the antithesis of Heideggerian dwelling. Our crisis of dwelling also mirrors our ecological collapse. Fixing the climate requires a shift in how we build, a new phenomenology of sustainability. This means turning to contemporary vernacular methods. Using hyper-local materials like bamboo and raw earth physically anchors a structure to its specific genius loci. It demands an approach to passive comfort. Instead of sealing bodies inside mechanical air conditioning, passive design allows inhabitants to physically feel thermal mass and natural breezes. True sustainability is a profound slowing down of construction to respect the deep time and phenomenological weight of matter. Reconciling the slow, artisanal time of phenomenological building with the urgent, high-volume demands of global urban housing is difficult. And while we've used European philosophy to map this out, the Cartesian grid of the West is a historical anomaly. Non-Western traditions have practiced spatial phenomenology for millennia. You see this in the Japanese concept of ma, which treats the space-time threshold between objects as structurally vital. You hear it in the acoustic intimacy of Islamic Medinas, and you feel it in the kinesthetic layouts of African vernacular architecture. Across all of these traditions, authentic architecture operates exactly the same way. It is the deliberate sedimentation of time, physical body, and memory into matter. Ultimately, building provides the precise physical mechanism that is required for humanity to truly and peacefully dwell in the world.